Sometimes a person's relationship with desire can look healthy on the surface, but underneath, it might be shaped by craving, compulsion, or the fear of being alone with their own emotions. And that brings us into today's topic. 6 signs a woman is addicted to sex and feels like she can't live without it. This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. It's about understanding what happens when emotional needs get tangled up with physical desire. And by the end of this video, you might see patterns you've never noticed before. Patterns in dating, communication, intimacy, and even your own relationship history. I'm the Intimacy Doctor, real talk, real science, real intimacy. And today we're going to explore this with empathy, curiosity, and psychological depth. So take a breath, settle in, and let's walk through this together. When people hear the phrase addicted to sex, they often misunderstand it. They imagine something wild, dramatic, or extreme. But in real life, this pattern can show up quietly, in behaviors that seem confident, adventurous, or even passionate. Many women who struggle with compulsive intimacy don't appear out of control at all. Instead, they often appear emotionally open, flirtatious, deeply connected to physical touch, or extremely confident. The truth is, compulsive desire is rarely about desire itself. It's usually about what desire is covering. Most behaviors that look like "I can't live without sex" often come from deeper emotional needs. Validation, safety, distraction, escape, soothing, or the fear of being unwanted. As we explore these signs, keep in mind that these patterns are rooted in psychology, experience, attachment, and vulnerability, not in who someone is at their core. And before we go deeper, let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who seemed energized, regulated, or emotionally balanced only when they were in a sexual connection with someone? If yes, keep watching. You're going to understand a lot more by the end of this video. The first sign is emotional regulation through intimacy. This means she uses sexual connection not for pleasure, but as a way to regulate emotions she hasn't learned to handle in healthier ways. Stress, loneliness, boredom, anxiety, insecurity instead of talking about what she's feeling, practicing self-soothing, or using healthy communication. She uses sexual energy as a form of emotional escape. It's very similar to what we see in behavioral addictions. When the nervous system gets trained to expect dopamine through one specific behavior, she may feel restless, edgy, disconnected, or irritable when there is no physical intimacy. Not because she truly wants connection, but because she needs the dopamine hit to return to emotional balance. This pattern often develops in childhood or early relationships, where emotional needs were minimized or ignored, leading her to associate desire with comfort. Let me ask you this. Does she seem calm and sweet after intimacy, but distant, overwhelmed, or anxious before it? If that sounds familiar, you might be seeing a form of emotional self-medication disguised as desire. Share your thoughts below. I love hearing how these topics resonate with you. Another major sign is the craving for validation, specifically through sexual attention. This is one of the most common patterns in compulsive intimacy. When someone relies on sexual desire to feel worthy, attractive, or valuable, they often fall into a cycle where they chase the physical connection not for connection's sake, but to feel wanted. You might notice she lights up when someone expresses attraction, even if it's someone she doesn't actually want. Compliments about her body or sexuality hit differently, almost like fuel. If she goes too long without sexual affirmation, she becomes insecure, self-critical, or emotionally low. This dependency on external validation can make her feel like her value is tied to being desired. Psychology research calls this contingent self-worth, meaning your self-esteem rises and falls depending on one specific source. In this case, sexual attention. This doesn't mean she's shallow or manipulative. In fact, many women who experience this often struggle with deep emotional wounds around rejection or self-worth. Instead of communicating these vulnerable feelings, they seek the quickest form of validation available, sexual interest. If this resonates or reminds you of someone, Hit the like button so this video can reach more people who need to hear it. The next sign is difficulty forming emotional connections without sexual intensity. Some people confuse sexual chemistry with emotional closeness. If she struggles to bond, open up, or feel connected unless intimacy is involved, that's a sign she may rely on desire to bridge emotional distance. She may say things like, "I don't feel connected unless we're physical," or "I only feel close to someone when things get intense." This isn't about wanting passion. This is about needing physical intimacy to feel secure. It's often linked to avoidant or anxious. Avoidant attachment styles, where vulnerability feels unsafe, but sex feels familiar. Sexual bonding becomes the shortcut. Instead of learning how to build trust, communicate honestly, set boundaries, or express feelings, she leans on physical intensity to create the illusion of emotional closeness. And here's the tricky part. The relationship might feel amazing in the beginning, exciting, passionate, magnetic, but emotionally shallow underneath. When the physical excitement fades, she may feel empty or disconnected, which pushes her to chase the next rush. Let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone who was emotionally distant unless things got physical, and then suddenly they seemed loving, open, and connected? If so, this pattern might make a lot more sense now. Another sign is a pattern of impulsive choices driven by desire, not intention. When a woman is struggling with compulsive intimacy, she may act on impulse without thinking about the long-term impact. She might repeatedly engage with people who don't treat her well, ignore red flags, or prioritize physical attraction over emotional compatibility. It's not that she doesn't know better, it's that the desire system overrides the logic system. Neurologically, this is because dopamine impacts decision-making by making short-term pleasure feel more important than long-term well-being. She may wake up the next day feeling regretful, confused, or emotionally numb, but then repeat the behavior the next time she feels lonely, stressed, or disconnected. It becomes a cycle, one that feels impossible to break without building self-awareness and emotional tools. And this is where communication and emotional intelligence become so important. When someone learns how to identify their emotional triggers, communicate their needs, and set boundaries with themselves, the compulsion begins to lose its power. If you know someone who seems stuck in repetitive patterns of impulsive intimacy, comment below. What patterns have you noticed that people often don't talk about? The next sign is emotional withdrawal or irritability when intimacy is not available. This is where the "can't live without it" feeling becomes obvious. She may seem completely fine when she's in a sexual rhythm, calm, confident, grounded. But when that rhythm is interrupted, her mood shifts. She may become distant, frustrated, restless, or unusually sensitive. This emotional withdrawal isn't about the absence of sex itself. It's about the absence of the coping mechanism she's grown dependent on. This mirrors the behavior seen in other compulsive patterns. The mind becomes accustomed to using one behavior to regulate emotions, so without it, the emotional world feels overwhelming. Some women describe it as an itch, a craving, a heaviness, or even a sense of emptiness. Others describe it as irritation, impatience, or emotional fog. If you've ever seen someone go from warm and affectionate to cold and withdrawn, simply because the sexual energy dropped, that shift may reveal their underlying dependency. This is a good moment to reflect. Do you think modern hookup culture has normalized emotional withdrawal as a response to unmet physical desire? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Another major sign, and one that's often hidden, is difficulty being alone with their own emotions. Many women who feel addicted to sex aren't searching for pleasure. They're searching for distraction. They struggle with quiet moments, self-reflection, stillness, or emotional discomfort. Being alone forces them to face insecurities they don't want to confront, fears of abandonment, fears of not being enough, fears of not being loved, fears of being emotionally invisible. Physical intimacy becomes the easiest escape. It provides quick dopamine, quick closeness, quick illusion of connection. But the deeper emotional work remains untouched. In healthy intimacy, sex deepens connection. In compulsive intimacy, sex replaces connection. That's the key difference. This pattern is rarely talked about because it doesn't match the stereotype. Many people assume a woman who is sexually driven must be confident, empowered, or liberated. But the psychological truth is often more complex. She may be chasing connection. She never learned to create emotionally. Tell me in the comments, do you think society glamorizes sexual freedom while ignoring the emotional wounds behind some of these behaviors? As we understand these signs, remember, this is not about labeling, judging, or shaming. This is about emotional awareness. This is about compassion. This is about understanding how desire, psychology, and human connection become intertwined. Many women who struggle with compulsive intimacy are deeply loving, deeply emotional, and deeply vulnerable. But they've been conditioned to believe that sexual connection is the most reliable, or perhaps the only way to access affection, validation, or closeness. When someone builds emotional intelligence, learns healthy communication, and begins to understand their deeper emotional needs, the compulsion begins to dissolve. They start choosing partners more intentionally. They start setting boundaries they didn't know they needed. They start building intimacy through trust, communication, and emotional connection, not through compulsion or fear. If any part of this resonated with you, gently tap that like button so this video can reach more people who might need these insights. And share your thoughts below. What stood out to you? Or what patterns have you seen in your own relationships or the people around you? Your perspective adds so much depth to this community. If you want more videos about intimacy, emotional intelligence, relationship psychology, and real relationship science, make sure you subscribe to The Intimacy Doctor and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. And if you want to keep exploring this topic, watch my next video where we break down the emotional signs of attachment, base desire, and how it shapes the relationships we choose. I'll see you there, and until then, keep choosing emotional awareness, healthy communication, and real intimacy.